So, guys, I want to talk about All Elite Wrestling, and I'm very, very concerned about something, which is Blood and Guts. And I really feel like this year, my prediction is that they're going to have it in Chicago because they're really setting it up. Like you saw John Moxley attack Colt Cabana. And then my other thing is that I think Colt Cabana is associated with the conglomeration. So you're going to have like a mix of Hangman and the conglomeration if they do this. And then my other like concern is ultimately, what would happen if they did have AEW Blood and Guts, and why that would not be a good idea for a couple of reasons. That number one is that they just did the Texas Death Match, so it does become a little repetitive because you just had back to back, ultra violent matches, and you just want to just do it again, really. So it's almost like when you have stuff like that, it's not going to stand out. Like I'm going to the Combat Zone Tournament of Death Match. So if it's something like back-to-back death matches, that's not going to be a good show, really, because again, it's going to be like it's going to be like a remix song, really. It's going to be like the same type of, well, you know what, we're going to just do the same thing again, really, or we're going to add a little bit more stuff. And then the other thing too is that there's a diminishing return, really. So you do back-to-back hardcore things. Then there's a diminishing return. And then the other thing too is that Blood and Guts, Hangman becoming a champion, the redemption, fighting with everything that he had, really. Like, there's been like a couple of year builds to that. It's been an emotional journey for a couple of months with Blood and Guts. What you're really just doing is giving John Moxley an excuse to have a violent match, and then also just for Hangman to be involved in that, and then just boost the rating, really. Like, there's really no substance to it other than just let's boost a TV rating. So it's not really something that you're just having it just to have it, really. You're just trying to be like Combat Zone Wrestling, or you're trying to be like WWE when they had the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. I guess many people said there's times when Hell in a Cell works and you should have that, and then there's times when you have a pay-per-view and you just have it just to have it, and there's times when you have Blood and Guts every single summer to have it just to have it, really. And I just don't think that's good. The other issue that I do have is, and I think this is another one of the big things, is that why can't you have it at All Out? And I think All Out needs to be the pay-per-view to have it, because last year they got a reputation for being too violent. So why not make All Out kind of like more of the hardcore, violent, grudge-settling show, really? That could be like where you have it. Or my other like piece of thing is that if you really want to do this, why don't you have this at Forbidden Door? And this is one of the matches that you have on the card, really. And one of the reasons why you do that is because Blood and Guts is not a television match. It's a pay-per-view match. Because what you're going to do is that you're going to have a bunch of very violent spots, and you're going to have to sugar it down, really. Because, you can't just do a lot of graphic stuff on television, because you have to think about the sponsors. You have to think about, oh, well, it's not on Comedy Central with South Park, or it's not on Adult Swim, where you're going to find sponsors that tolerate more ultra-violent content, really. So it's almost going to be a little bit like Family Guy, because, Family Guy can go far, but they can't go as far as South Park, really, because they're still on Fox, really. So I just think that that's one of the main reasons. It just does not make sense. And then the other thing, too, is that, yes, for the British crowd, they've seen all types of AEW matches, so why not just have a card with Forbidden Door matches, but you also put in some hardcore stuff as well, like give them kind of like a diversity thing, because really the goal of AEW needs to be selling out Wembley Stadium in 2026. That needs to be their long-term goal. So, can they fix the ratings? Can they make the UK crowd happy, really? Like, what can they do to make everybody excited for Wembley Stadium next year? They cannot do something like, I think they had 40,000 people, 50,000 or 40,000 last year. So, and now they had like 29,000 at All In. So you're seeing like every single year they're losing between like 30 and 20,000. So what's going to happen at Wembley Stadium? We're going to have like 9,000 people, and then say, hey, we're going to move it to the O2 Arena because we can't sell out Wembley Stadium, just like they did with Grand Slam in Australia, where it was a 50,000 seat arena. Yes, it was meant to be a pay-per-view, because there's no way you're having a 50,000 seat arena for a Collision and for a 4-hour collision with some Ring of Honor matches. No. It was meant to be a pay-per-view show. So what you're going to try to do, are you going to try to, justify it or whatever, really? No. You have to make sure, Wembley Stadium is a big deal. And one way to make a big deal is to have a match like Blood and Guts and save it for that show. Not throw it in on a random, thing in Chicago and hope that you go from, maybe 1,000 people to, 5,000. But more than likely, they're going to have, 1,300 or 1,400. People, an extra 300 or 400 people for that. And then my other thing about Blood and Guts is the title reign, because what's going to happen is, what would happen if there's an argument that he said that, okay, well, maybe you're going to have the Moxley faction do a beatdown on Hangman to just, just to kind of lengthen the storyline. And then also, what happens if you're going to have MJF come in and cash it in, because you're going to be like, okay, well, we had that great moment at AEW All In Texas, and now we're going to take that away, really. Because I'm not sure. It's almost like when CM Punk became the WWE champion, and I think they said a few weeks later, after he won it from John Cena, then he went to different companies. He lost it to Alberto Del Rio, if I'm correct, because Kevin Nash did the power bombs on him or whatever, really. So you can honestly have a really great title run and make people really happy and excited, and then just take it away and make it lackluster. Then it's almost like then we're going to be invested in MJF as a champion. So that's another concern about Blood and Guts. They may just swerve the audience and get to MJF versus Hangman, or we may get to Moxley and Hangman, part two. And I think this is the last and final thing, is that the Death Riders, nobody's really invested in the Death Riders versus Hangman part 2, a continuation of that story. It was really drawn out. Moxley can't speak on the microphone. He's abstract, really. He's a controversial, polarizing wrestler. So why are we doing something like saying, hey, you know what? If it's been frustrating, if it's killed the ratings, why are we just, allowing, part 2 of this? It just doesn't, there's nothing really there, really. It's almost like if you do Randy Orton versus John Cena. They've wrestled over 200 times. Let's just do a build up to a final match between them at John Cena's retirement show. No, it just wouldn't be good, because people are like, oh, it's the same old shit, really. Or, well, there's a diminishing return. Let's do Goldberg versus The Undertaker at WrestleMania next year. Oh, no, there's diminishing return. People don't like Goldberg as a wrestler, really. So, they have to think about the fact that, just like those hypotheticals, just like those analogies, this whole Moxley thing is not working. So he should be in the trios division for a while if they want to do something with him and keep their momentum. Or you do something, you bring Bryan Danielson and Darby back, and then they have feuds with Moxley and then the Death Riders. Or you have Claudio betray Moxley and do something with that. But the way it is right now, 100% is I do not want to see a continuation of Hangman and Moxley, and a concern that they may do another championship match, or they're concerned that they may just give the title back to Moxley, or concerned that MJF's going to gain the title, and then you're going to have Moxley and Hangman just to spin their wheels one more time. Nobody really wants to see that, but Blood and Guts would be the way to kind of justify or make that as a twist ending, and nobody would want that, So I don't think this is the right year to have Blood and Guts. I think it's going to do a lot more damage than goodwill, but that's a possibility that they may have it.